Over the past week or so, we've been discussing online the difference and the comparison between Halloween 2018 and Halloween H2O. I think if you're going to compare Halloween movies, I think those two movies always come into the forefront because they are very similar, and Jamie Lee Curtis came back after a long period of time in both of the movies, so it is only natural to compare the movies, and that's what I'm going to do today.
Everybody's a suspect!
Coming to get you, Bobber.
Now, Halloween H2O and Halloween 2018 get a lot of stick online from people, more so Halloween H2O. And in fact, Halloween H2O gets a lot of stick, so much that I done a video about 2 years ago now called In Defense or Defending Halloween H2O, because a lot of the negatives that I see online are positives for me. I don't see why they can be negatives. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit today, and I'm going to compare it to the kind of positives and negatives, or the pros and cons of Halloween 2018, and I'll let you know what I prefer in or around one of those timelines. As with any movie, and Halloween 2018 is absolutely no exception, as movies come out during a trend. Now, Halloween H2O maybe followed a trend back in 1998 with the Scream style trend that was going on back then. That's not a bad thing, because if you're wanting to get with the times and make the money at the box office, you're going to have to adapt to a different type of subgenre, and that's what Halloween H2O had to do at the time. Because remember guys, Halloween was going nowhere back in the late 90s until Jamie Lee Curtis came back, Kevin Williamson came on board, and they made this kind of hip meta style Halloween movie. So as much as some people say they're copying Scream, they've got Scream to thank for the success of the Halloween franchise to keep the franchise going. That was a style back then, so when you got movies like Urban Legend, I Know What You Did Last Summer, I Still Know What You Did Last Summer, even The Faculty, which is a kind of sci-fi movie, they were all following that style back then. So we can't then look back over 20 years and go, oh, that's rubbish because it's copying all the movies back then. Of course it is, because it was a movie back then. If it came out today and copied movies from back then they could complain, but we can't really complain because it's a 23-year-old movie. It is just like the movies of 23 years ago. Now, when you look at Halloween 2018, that sort of started a trend of reboots from a specific point in the timeline. Yes, I think the Texas Chainsaw from 2013 was probably one of the bigger ones in recent memory to do that. So Halloween 2018 isn't a trend setter, but because it made so much of the box office, other movies are starting to do that now. So when you look back in Halloween 2018, in 20 years time, you might think the same about that as you do just now with Halloween H2O. You might go, oh, look at Halloween 2018 when that came out. That was just doing what every other movie done back then and ignored other movies in the franchise. Yes, of course, because that was a trend in 2018 or there or thereabouts. So when you're comparing both of the timelines, they both do the same thing. They both are trending and what was trendy at the time. But if I'm going to choose a timeline, then it's hard for this one because I kind of do prefer the H2O timeline. I'll get into the whole brother-sister aspect shortly, but when it comes to looking at the timelines, I think ignoring the events of Halloween 2 onwards is maybe a stretch too far. I do like it, but if I have to compare, I'm going to compare that with H2O and say that H2O was maybe a little bit better, because the events of characters like Dr. Loomis can't really be ignored, and H2O doesn't ignore Dr. Loomis and what he done between 1 and H2O. So therefore I think H2O just beats it at that part. Let's look at the sibling aspect, the brother-sister or the stranger aspect. It is a hard one because I do like the brother-sister aspect because I was used to it for so long in the franchise, and then when it came to the epic battle 20 years later between brother and sister, I think it was epic because she knew who he was and she knew what the stakes were. Whereas in Halloween 2018 they had to force Laurie and Michael together. It's good that they weren't siblings because you didn't have that restraint, but then they backed themselves into a corner with that story, because even though they made it that they weren't brother and sister, they had to find a way to get the two of them together, and they used Dr. Sartain, and we all know how that ended up. So I think it was too forced, even though they weren't brother and sister anymore, whereas we had the restraints of brother and sister in H2O, but it felt natural. So when it comes to brother and sister or not brother and sister, with the way the two stories went in particular, I'm going to have to choose H2O with the brother and sister aspect. Even though I don't mind them not being related, I have to go with the H2O storyline. Where was Michael all this time over the past 20 years and over the past 40 years? Now, knowing us, and a lot of us, we like to know, or we like to think there is a mystery behind Michael Myers. Yes, in H2O we already know who he was and who he was related to, but where was he for the past 20 years? Well, to be honest, I don't really need to know, and I don't want to know. We want to have some mystery of Michael Myers, and to know where he was over the last 20 years between the events of Halloween 2 and H2O is a mystery, and I like that. I don't really mind where he was. That's Michael Myers to a T. Now, people who don't like H2O but love the mystery of Michael Myers but prefer Halloween 2018, that's a mystery in itself, because we now know where Michael's been for the last 40 years. He's been locked up. Where's the mystery in that? Now again, it's acceptable for that timeline, but if you're going to compare H2O and H18, the mystery lies with Halloween H2O. I much prefer that one over Halloween 2018 in terms of mystery, in terms of where was Michael Myers. You want to know less. Less is more in the Halloween franchise, and that's where Halloween H2O reigns supreme. Let's look at the masks, because I know the masks are a big talking point in both movies. This is where I'll have to give it hands down to Halloween 2018, but not by a landslide, because I do like the mask, the real mask that they used in H2O, the one designed by Stan Winston. Yes, we've got a CGI mask that was terrible. Yes, we've got the terrible Halloween Curse of Michael Myers mask at the beginning of H2O. That was like a clay heavy face mask that I didn't like. And then obviously you had that weird looking mask, the KGB mask or something, that was used throughout the movie, and then they had to replace that with the Stan Winston mask. So yes, Halloween H2O had a mask problem. They did go with the Stan Winston mask, that the eye holes were slightly bigger, but it wasn't massively bigger than the other masks used throughout the series. It was just lit differently, so you could see his eyes more. And I did mention that I don't mind seeing Michael's eyes, because he is the brother of Laurie Strode, and we had to see that epic showdown between Michael and Laurie. So seeing his eyes in it wasn't an issue for me. But overall, I have to give it to the Halloween 2018 mask, because when you want to have a mask that's kind of rotten over 40 years or sitting in storage, that's what it would look like. And it does look a lot like the 1978 mask. So props to H18. It wins it in the mask department. Here's a touchy subject: trauma. And the reason it's touchy, because I've not had a traumatic experience, so I don't know which is more realistic, H2O or H18. Those who have had traumatic experiences in their life maybe would be able to resonate with these experiences more than I do, but I'm only going by my production value and story value with these ones. You've got Halloween H2O, 20 years later, Laurie's went in hiding, and this is where we talk about the setting as well, so we'll do that after this one. She's away in hiding. She doesn't live in Haddonfield anymore. She's kind of a semi-alcoholic and just trying to forget Michael Myers exists. Then you've got Halloween 2018, where she is traumatised after 40 years. She's built a dungeon in her basement, like a trap for Michael Myers for when he escapes. Now, I think the most realistic one is H2O. She's went into hiding, and she's still living with the fear after 20 years, changed her name. I think that's a more realistic thing to do. You wouldn't, in real life, after 40 years, prepare yourself for Michael's escape and for him to come after you, because does he even know who Laurie Strode is? Probably not. So, realistically, I would say that H2O was a more realistic one, but again, I've not been traumatised in my life like that, so I don't know what it would be like. I think after 40 years, you would learn to live with it. if you're living in Haddonfield, you know where Michael Myers is. He's an old man now. You would expect him not to get out, and you would expect him not to remember you after chasing you for 2 hours, 3 hours one night. So I think H2O wins in the trauma department for me. Now, going back to the setting, H2O wasn't set in Haddonfield, whereas H18 was set in Haddonfield. Now this is where it's tricky, because realistically you wouldn't set it in Haddonfield if you've got a character who's in hiding, but when you've got a character who's not in hiding, you would automatically set it in Haddonfield. So I can't really fault either movie for where they set them, because they set them in a place where it felt more relevant for the storyline. So I would say it was a draw in that department. Next we're going to talk about Michael Myers. Who was the better Michael Myers? Was it Chris Durand or James Jude Courtney? Now I know that a lot of people have issues with Chris Durand's Michael Myers, because they read that he didn't watch any of the Halloween movies and he was just going by what he read on the script and that was it. So that was quite amateurish from Chris Durand, but he wasn't an actor, he was just a stuntman. So he didn't really have the acting chops to be a Michael Myers character, and he didn't really know what it took to become Michael Myers. But when you look at Chris Durand, his build and his movements, I would say that his build and movements were on point for a Michael Myers of that age and that era. He did walk at a normal pace like Nick Castle did. He was a little bit taller than Nick Castle. I know a lot of people's complaints with Chris Durand was he was too small. He obviously wasn't too small. He was a little bit taller than the original Michael Myers. I think people compare Chris Durand to Tyler Mane, and you shouldn't do that, because Tyler Mane was too big for everyone. So Chris Durand's look and build was perfect for the time. But then when you look at James Jude Courtney, as much as I love Chris Durand and I think he's one of the best, I think James Jude Courtney is the better out of the two. He's a little bit taller again, I think, but he seemed to have studied Nick Castle's movements a little bit better. I think James Jude Courtney is probably a good actor as well, and he just got that feel and aura of a 61-year-old Michael. I think he plays the role better than Chris Durand did. Sometimes I think James Jude Courtney plays Nick Castle better than Nick Castle did, so that's a major improvement over Chris Durand, and something that I love about James Jude Courtney. So I think hands down James Jude Courtney is a better Michael Myers. Let's look at the endings of the two movies. You've got Halloween H2O. Again, you've got to forget Resurrection ever existed, because when they made H2O they didn't know Resurrection was going to be made. Regardless of what you hear, Resurrection didn't exist. So Halloween H2O is ending. To end Michael Myers once and for all, Laurie Strode chops Michael's head off. Epic ending. I don't think you're going to top that one. And then when you look at Halloween 2018, they left the ending, rightfully so, more ambiguous. You could end it there and not make any more movies and assume that he's burned to death, or give him a chance to escape. Now, because you gave that ambiguous ending of making a sequel in the future, which they have done now with Halloween Kills, it takes away the mystery of the ending of the movie. Whereas Halloween H2O is a concrete ending. Even though we got Resurrection, it was a concrete ending, and I think we all know that. Michael's head got chopped off and that was it. It was an epic finale. I think if they ended Halloween there and never made another movie, you could look back in H2O and think, wow, what an ending to a semi-decent franchise overall. But then you've got Halloween 2018 where they didn't end it there, and now we have to look forward to Halloween Kills and Halloween Ends, which I'm not complaining about obviously, but when you look at Halloween Ends, something completely epic is going to have to outdo Halloween H2O, otherwise Halloween H2O will still be the best ending. So yeah, when it comes to comparing the endings to these two movies, it has to be Halloween H2O for definite. So when you look at these overall, guys, you'll clearly see who the winner is. In my opinion, Halloween H2O wins it. The only thing that I like about Halloween 2018 more than H2O was Michael himself, played by James Jude Courtney, and the mask. That was it. Everything else I preferred in Halloween H2O. Now, does that mean I don't like Halloween 2018? Absolutely not. I think Halloween 2018 is a strong entry in the franchise and I really like it, but it doesn't come without flaws. Halloween H2O doesn't come without flaws either, but I think H2O is a better made movie, a movie that makes more sense and comes with a little bit less of a flaw than Halloween 2018. So what do you think, guys? What movie do you prefer, H2O or H18? Leave your comments down below, let me know what you prefer. Also, if you want to, leave an explanation as to why. Maybe compare your notes to mine, because I know that some of the positives for me for both movies might be a negative for you, but I'd like to hear your thoughts anyway. And as always, guys, thanks a lot for watching, thanks for subscribing, I'll see you soon, bye bye.